I'm Father Alexander. Welcome to St. Peter's in Hove, and welcome to step 91 of our walking tour through the Bible. And this one's just going to be looking at one chapter in the first book of Samuel, namely chapter 25, which is a sort of self-contained story. It's a story of Nabal and Abigail. Now, you might like to just take time to read it by putting me on hold. Okay, if you've done that. We've got a couple, Nabal and Abigail, who are singularly ill-matched, and it looks like childless. Nabal is a very rich man, but he's a brute, and he's very stupid. He's very stupid because he can't really look to the future. When King David's men come to him asking for supplies, and after all, King David has an army of 600 people by this stage, as we're told, Nabal sends them packing. He refuses to be cooperative. He allows his churlish and nasty nature to get the better of him. He needlessly gives offence to a man who is well armed and who is short-tempered too. Because King David's clearly short-tempered, because he then takes 400 of his men, leaving 200 behind with the baggage, and decides to charge off to kill Nabal and his entire household. So King David is a man of quick temper, and we'll see that again and again in the story of King David. Now, Nabal is married to Abigail, who is beautiful and clever, and therefore must really regret the day she ever married Nabal. And Abigail sees the impending catastrophe, saddles her donkey, loads up her baggage train with presents, and rushes off to King David, throws herself down at him, begging forgiveness on behalf of Nabal, and then presenting David with all these presents. Then David changes his mind. He won't go and massacre Nabal after all. And he praises Abigail for saving him from committing an error. Now, the error would have been the massacre of Nabal and his entire household. Now, Abigail isn't able to save Nabal from making an error. Maybe she has done in the past, but not this time. But King David recognizes in Abigail the sort of qualities that are to be valued. This isn't just a pretty face. This isn't just an ornamental wife. This is a wise ruler of the household, one who can see ahead. Whereas Nabal sort of spoke very disparagingly about David, said, "Who is the son of Jesse? Where does he come from? We don't know anything about him. He's just an outlaw. We're not interested." Abigail sees King David as the future king of Israel. So Abigail places her bets on King David rising, whereas Nabal's too stupid to think about that. Abigail therefore has an insight, presumably granted to her by God, that King David is the chosen one, and King David is the one who's going to succeed. Then, of course, she goes back to Nabal, who's drunk and having a wonderful time, and in the morning she tells him what she's done, and his heart turns to stone. 10 days later, he's struck down by the Lord and he dies. Well, King David, having said to Abigail, "Blessed be the Lord God of Israel, who sent you to meet me today. Blessed be your wisdom, and blessed be you yourself, for today having restrained me from the crime of bloodshed and from exacting revenge." So he praises her highly, and she, of course, says, she also makes it clear, when the Lord has done well by you, then remember your servant. In other words, she's doing him a favor now. She's asking that, this favor will be paid back. And sure enough, now she's a widow, King David immediately sends off a message saying, "Let's get married." And she turns up and she marries him. He also marries Ahinoam of Jezreel at the same time. His previous wife, Michal, has been taken away by King Saul, King Saul's daughter. So therefore, although Michal later comes back, as we'll see, Abigail becomes the senior wife, the widow, and also Ahinoam of Jezreel is the secondary wife. So we have an extraordinary story here. And why is it in the Bible? It's an interesting thing. Well, the first reason it's in the Bible is because it's a good story. And our Jewish brethren who composed the Bible, who put it together, who edited it, said, "Oh, this is too good to leave out. We've got to put this in." Secondly, it wanted to show, I think, and it's useful that it shows that the women in the Bible are, on the whole, clever, beautiful as well, resourceful, quick thinking, forward looking, forceful, brave, and act when they need to act. They're not wilting violets. This Abigail is a really excellent person. She should be put in charge of a large multinational corporation. Which reminds us that the same could have been said of David's great-grandmother Ruth. Which reminds us the same could have been said of Tamar, David's ancestress in the book of Genesis. The same could certainly be said of quite a lot of other women in the Bible, as we'll see in future dates, in future steps which we take. Often people take the view that the Bible portrays women as either temptresses or fools, or both. Like Eve. Eve is a fool, to listen to this talking snake, and she's a temptress. She tempts Adam to do ill. And Adam does ill because Eve asks him to do ill. And then, of course, they fall to mutual recriminations. Eve, of course, is not a character in the way that Abigail is a character. Abigail is a character. Abigail is a lady who has presided over a vast household. I mean, her husband's got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of sheep and so on. But, you know, all the administration so was clearly done by Abigail, not by Nabal. Abigail is a person who, incidentally, when she saddles up her baggage train and rushes off to see King David, nobody says to her, oh, hang on a sec, are you sure you're doing the right thing? They all trust her to do the right thing. One of the young men tells Abigail, one of her servants tells Abigail, about what her husband has done. And therefore, this young man has gone to Abigail because he knows the mistress should know this, and he knows the mistress is a sensible woman who will undo the damage, whereas, of course, his master, Nabal, is by no means sensible at all. So, as a female person in the Bible, Abigail is completely admirable, whereas King David is not. He's been saved from making a mistake of massacring a whole load of people, a whole load of innocent people too, by Abigail. She's made him step back from that precipice. If he were to have kept Abigail with him at all times, he would have done a lot better. Because don't forget, King David is later condemned as that man of blood. You man of blood, he's called. And so Abigail represents a greater humanity and a greater wisdom than King David seems to have. And he says to her, blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel, who sent you to meet me today. Blessed be your wisdom, and blessed you yourself. In other words, sometimes when we're doing really foolish things, God will send somebody to us who will stop us. And we should say to them, hey, you're just like Abigail, who has stopped King David from doing something very stupid. He sent her an offer of marriage, not very romantic. Okay, he sent her a message saying, oh, by the way, would you like to get married? He didn't go and woo her himself. This is not the courtly love tradition that we English people and lovers of English literature have been brought up on. This is not Chaucer. Rather, it's a business merger. He's saying, I've noticed that you're a really high-quality manager. I'd like to take you on as, would you like to join up with me? Would you like to get married? Now, this is interesting. Of course, we know that we're told she's beautiful, but we know that also King David is exceptionally handsome, but that's not emphasized. It's a business proposition. So it might seem rather unromantic, but at the same time, please note, romance itself is not perhaps the best foundation of a marriage on its own. Romance is fine as long as it goes with other things. What we're talking about here is not just a romantic meeting up, we're talking about an alliance. Often you've heard the phrase, a bad marriage is called a misalliance. Well, this is an alliance, two people coming together for their common good, and each one will benefit from it. In other words, and indeed the whole state will benefit from it. And she does a lot of prostrating and so on. She knows that King David is vain. She knows she has to flatter King David. King David, as you probably guessed by now, is not my favourite character, whereas I really do like Abigail. She's much better than King David. Be honest. Who would you rather have ruling you? King David goes off planning massacres, or would you rather have Abigail with all those raisins she brings and cakes and so on and so forth? She's obviously a woman who has a great deal of foresight because she goes to her storehouses and her storehouses are well furnished. Who would you prefer as a ruler, Abigail or David? Um, she brings 5 servant girls with her as well. She became his wife. Well, Abigail, what a great woman you are. All the best. Bye.